Welcome to the From the Shadows podcast. I am your host, Shane Grove. And before we get started with this new episode, I just want to remind everybody that if you would like to follow us on our socials or get a hold of us, you can find us at fromtheshadowspodcast.com. And from there, you can go to our Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, X, whatever they call it now. There's also a contact button that if you would like to send me an email and tell me about an experience or something that you had, and maybe come on the show and share it, just right there, go to the contact button and send me an email. You can also find our store. You can also find a link to our Patreon page, which if you become a Patreon member, you get some extra content every month, and you get our episodes early and commercial free. If you want to get a hold of me directly, you can find me at Shane Grove Author on Instagram. Shoot me a message, and I'll get back to you. So with that being said, I've been trying to get our top secret guest that we have this week. He is remaining anonymous, so I just want to say that up front. So I will not be using his real name, or if you watch us on YouTube or on Patreon, you will not see his picture in the video. Okay. So I'll let him explain to the extent that he wants to explain why he's remaining anonymous. But I've been trying to get him on for a little bit here. He has some really cool stories from Northwest Virginia, and I can't wait for him to share them with everybody. So, John, welcome to the From the Shadows podcast. I'm glad I finally got you on the show.
Hey, Shane, it's good to talk to you. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. So let's get into your story. Like, what prompted you to, even get in contact with me so we could talk about, some stuff from your life here. I'd like for you to share that with the listeners.
It turns out we have a mutual acquaintance. They live in a neighboring county to where I live, and somehow we became friends online, and the topic came up, and they talked about how they were associated with you and what you do, and I let it, well, I wouldn't say slip. I got really excited because I have questions that I want answers to, and I was like, oh my God, I'd love to talk to that guy. I'd love to pick his brain and see what he knows. Maybe he knows, the answers to what I've seen or what I've heard and whatnot. So thanks to her, I don't know if you want to put her name out there, but thanks to her that it led me to you. So.
And just full disclosure, sadly, you did try to pick my brain and found that there was not very much there, and there were no answers to be found. So we're coming to here. Hopefully, somebody can answer some of these questions that you have about some of your experiences. So I don't know if I can help any more than what I have, but I'm eager for you to share some of these experiences. I mean, I'm glad that our mutual friend is keeping an ear out, and if somebody has some great experiences, she's letting me know. That's the best part about having good friends.
Yes, it is. She's definitely recruiting. I'll give her
that. So let's go to where this all started for you.
It's probably the earliest odd experience I can think of, because like I told you earlier, I sat down a few years ago and started jotting down the different stuff, and it was like, man, that's a lot of that's a lot of weird stuff. Like, it's nothing super crazy, most of it, but it's just like every so often it keeps popping up. But the first one I can think of, like, so we live Northwest Virginia, out in the country, Blue Ridge Mountain. 92, I would have been October of 92. I want to say there was a full moon. It was very, very bright out. My parents had gone through a divorce. I was like 14. My mother got the house. We moved back up to the mountain, live in the house. And her room was upstairs, or where their room had been. I decided, at 14, the man of the house, I was going to sleep downstairs. Curtains are open. bright full moon. It looks out the back corner of the house over the garden. Um, and Probably 10 o'clock at night, drifting off to sleep, and something just catches my attention. I don't know if it was movement. I don't know if it was a feeling. Something catches my attention. But I look to my left, which is where the window would be, and there is a huge, massive shape that it looks like the outline of a human, but it's massive. It takes like 2 steps and gets, and I'm looking at it. It takes 2 steps. It gets right up to the window. You can see the shadowed. I couldn't tell you the eye color. I couldn't tell you if it had a scar on its nose or missing a tooth, but you could see where those facial features would be. It was shadowed, but you could see where that, you could see the outline, the profile, all that. You could see that. I couldn't tell you if he had, a tattoo, but you could see the profile of this shape. And it shocked me to my core. I had grown up thinking I was going to, run away. My dad wasn't the greatest guy. I was going to run away, and just live in the woods, because, he never came looking for me there. You could get away there. It was quiet. It was peaceful. This shocked me to my core. Never seen anything like it. And it stood there. And at the time it was so scary. I remember laying in the bed and wanting to yell and wanting to move. And it felt like I was fighting myself to make a noise. Like, I don't know, the fear, whatever had a hold of me so bad. I could feel myself vibrating, for lack of a better term, trying to get a sound out. And when this thing stepped up to the window, its head was up at the top of the window, and it's a 3-panel window. If you've ever seen them, they're Anderson windows. It's 3 panels. They open, the rectangles, and the short end is up at the top and the bottom, and they open on a hinge and they go out, as if you're looking at your cell phone, as you normally would, and you just turn the what would be the left side to the right. It's like a door. They're bigger windows. They're probably, I'm looking at one now, it's probably over 4 foot, at least 4 foot from one side to the other. They're about 3 feet tall. This thing's head at the top of it. Its body takes the whole entire center pane, and its shoulders are out to the edges of to the edges of the other 2 panes. Don't know how long I laid there and wrestled with myself or whatever. Finally got a scream out, got a noise out, like it broke. I broke through something, because suddenly I could scream. I screamed real loud. My mother comes downstairs. I can hear her coming down the steps. When I hear her coming, I see this thing take 1 big step back. I can see it turn, and then it takes 2 big steps towards the wood line, and it's gone. It couldn't be a shadow. The moon's up above it. The shadow would have been, I could see it. She, of course, doesn't believe it, but I know what I saw. And for like the next 2 years, you couldn't get me to open a window. I moved right back upstairs. Summertime, house doesn't have AC, didn't matter. I was sweating to death. I was not opening that window. I knew that thing could reach in there and get me. That's how it felt. I've gone back later and measured the window and everything. It had to be at least, whatever, had to be at least 8 feet tall. At least 8 feet tall. The top of that window is 8 foot 4 inches. Because outside the window, I'm 6'2". Outside of that window, the bottom sill is about mid-chest on me. It's well below my shoulders. And I'm 6'2". That thing was at least 8, maybe 9 feet. I can't remember exactly what I measured it at, but it's well over 8 feet tall. Whatever she, whatever it was massive. I've got a 60-inch chest. I don't block out all 3 window panes, not at all. I'm over into the second 2, but it ain't by a lot. Whatever it was absolutely massive. That was like 92. If you fast forward 20 years or more, I had a relative living at a house behind ours. It used to be basically abandoned. Um, my uncle fixed it up, got it together, made a very nice home out of it. He rents it. This relative was renting the home. He lived there for quite a while, and then suddenly he was gone. And was talking to a friend, and I was like, "Hey, yeah, I noticed such and such left. He moved away. I didn't think he'd do that." And he said, "Oh, you didn't hear his dad didn't tell you?" And I was like, "No. What happened?" And he chuckles and he says, "Apparently, he saw a Bigfoot in his backyard, and he packed up and was gone within a week." And I was like, "What?" And he was like, "Yeah, that's what his dad told me." So I went to his dad, and he was like, "Yeah, sure enough. He's 10 days ago, whatever it was then. He said, I got a phone call about 9:30 at night. Such and such called and said, get your gun and get up here right now." He was walking his dog. The dog starts, barking and snapping at the wood line. And he looks over and he said that there was a massive, what he described as a Bigfoot, but it was gray at the wood line looking at him. The dog starts going crazy. This thing turns around and runs through the woods. The dad says he told him it was sounding like a dozer going through. All you could hear was limbs and trees snapping down through the mountainside. And so he ran and called him, told him get up there. He checked around, never saw anything. And within a week, he was packed up and gone. He moved to town, and he's never come back. It's
now, when you got that story, did you mention your story to the guy that told you that, or to your uncle at all?
I mentioned to that relative's dad that that I had a weird. I didn't tell him about seeing what I saw in the window because of what I do. But I'd mentioned that we will set 18, probably about 18. I had a cousin and a best friend talk me into going camping down behind that house, down through the woods, maybe quarter mile. And I had a dog that we had gotten from, he had flunked out of a customs program.
Okay.
Super great dog, but he wouldn't, after about 20 minutes, he was done doing whatever you want him to do because he'd already done it for you. But a super great dog, very effective, wouldn't let anything come near the house, come near anybody in the family. If another dog showed up or any kind of animal, he got between it, and it was not coming over. He actually treed about like a 300-pound black bear in the driveway one morning. We had to bring him back and hold him so the bear could go on. We go camping. It gets dark. We have a campfire. I'm a little nervous, but I'm with two of them. Hopefully, it eats one of them first, but I'm trying to get over it at that point. And then it gets kind of quiet, and it's still, but we're not really catching on to it. We're laughing, we're joking. I think we're cooking hot dogs or something stupid. And then you can hear something in the brush, and we're trying to look, but we've got like cheap dollar store flashlights. You can't see anything past 20 feet or whatever. But whatever it is, they had recently logged that area. It's a couple different properties that come together. They logged it, and whatever it is, it's walking around just outside the firelight, out in the darkness, and it's cracking brush and breaking limbs the entire time. And I've had a bear walk up on a scene I was at later on that made a ton of racket. But I've also hunted bear, and I've never had anything make that much noise. And this thing did it for hours. We got into the tent because we couldn't see to go, and I was like, "You're not running off and leaving me, because I'm going to be the last one up the trail. Like, you're not leaving me. Like, I'm going to kick somebody in the knee. Like, you're not dropping me off here. Somebody's staying, with me." So we all got in the tent, and that dog dove in, never made a sound, never whimpered, never barked, never growled, never nothing. And he wasn't aggressive, but he was very protective, and that was really, really weird. He got in the back corner and stayed next to me, and we sat there all night. And this thing is just walking around in the brush. And one of us would go out and like throw a limb in the fire and go and get back in. And we waited till dawn. And when dawn finally came and you could see, we get out of the tent, the sound had stopped maybe 15, 20 minutes before the light really got into the woods. And as soon as we got out, that dog just gone like a shot, never looked back, never slowed down, never nothing, left me standing still. And he'd never done that before. Never did it again, but it was gone. So I told the dad bits and pieces of that story because we ran off and left the tent. I asked my cousin later, I was like, "Did you get the tent?" He was like, "Yeah." He said her brother or whatever went back with me to get it. He said, they were insistent that I bring their tent back. And I was like, "I'm not going down there." But I told the dad about that, and he was like, he said, I used to work for the same government agency local government that you work for. And he said, it got me permission to hunt. And I was hunting over near where I had this one experience. And he said, I found a set of tracks. He said, he's like 6'2". And he said, this thing's foot was like 6 inches longer than my boot. He said, I followed all the way up through the hollow till they got to like a 4-board fence. And he said, you could see 1 foot on this side and 1 foot on the other side of that fence. Like it just stepped over and kept walking. He said, that's where I turned around and went back. He said, I didn't want to find whatever that was.
Because even if it's not a Bigfoot, it's a big dude.
Whatever it is,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, like there's nothing that you want to get a hold of with whatever's leaving tracks like that. It's crazy. But yeah, later on, when I went to work for the local government, I had a couple different things and ran into some people in the same hollow where he found those tracks. I ran across a lady. Her and her dad had it was a Bigfoot. She was very blunt about it once she realized that I was serious. He saw one in the 70s, and she saw one probably mid 90s, 96 or something. It came over a 3-board fence, came down a bank, stopped right in the middle of the road. She stopped her truck. The wonder she didn't hit it from the way she described it. And then it stood there and looked at her. And then she said it leaned forward, put both hands on the hood of like a little Chevy S10 and pushed it down, made the whole thing squeak and looked in the windshield at her and then turned and went up the bank. She said in one step, and the bank is like a 6-foot bank. It's steep, went up the bank, over the rock wall, and was gone. And she didn't she'd made a comment, and I'd called it. And then I happened to get in touch with her and got it out of her. And she was like, yeah, she's like, I don't tell anybody because who's going to believe it? But they go for walks. She lives up in the hollow. They go for walks. And she said, you can hear, what she thinks is wood knocks. I don't know. I'm not going to go looking for it. But here's wood knocks and here's the brush move. And when they're walking, there's something moving in the woods. And I was like, I think I would put that dog on a runner. I don't think I'd walk out there, especially after dark. I think I'd stay in the yard. But she's also the one, she's got no reason to lie to me. She's also the one, I was like, you ever see anything else? And she was like, well, she said, you're going to think I'm crazy. I said, we're standing here talking about Bigfoot. You tell me your story. I told you mine. Like what else you got? She's like, well, in the eastern part of the county, I'm going to work early one morning and it looks like a monkey runs across the road. And I was like a Bigfoot monkey, And she said, no, it looked like a monkey, but it was a big brown monkey with a tail, and it looked just nasty, just mean. And I was like, I don't know, I've never seen, but the way she described it, it kind of sounds like that devil monkey thing. I don't know, I've never seen it. I don't want to see it. But she's got no reason to lie. She's a very nice woman. She's very, it would only hurt her reputation if I went back and was like, guess what such and such told me. So it doesn't make any sense. Just like this guy, the dad of the relative, it would only hurt his reputation, and he's very well known in the county. He's got no reason to lie. It doesn't make sense. But there's a lot of us that work for the local county, and I've heard on other podcasts all those kind of guys are in cahoots, and we know who to. No, we don't. At least I don't. I wish I did. I'd get some answers, but
so you're saying you did not. So you're going on the record as saying you did not call the Men in Black to come and investigate that lady and her dad, who had. No. Okay, so
I would love to have the number because I could probably weasel some answers, over a piece of cake somewhere, but if they're out there and they work with the local agencies, they've never talked to me, and I'm usually the one that they send. hey, there's been a cat that's been mauled over here. They want to know what to do. Like, oh, I'll be there in 30 minutes. I'm on my way. I want to see what happened too. Was it a bear? Usually it is. Was it a coyote? Yeah, I want to see what happened too. Um, so I get in good with the folks that send us to those things. I make sure they have their coffee and their donuts or whatever. So um,
Don't
I have a
don't
heads
threaten
up.
you. Don't threaten you with a good time, right? Because you'll take
I
them
have
up.
yeah. I have to know. I have to know. It's too close to home. I have to know. It's
Wow,
not it's not happening in Canada or Oregon. It's happening here where I live,
in your
where
backyard. Yeah.
where my kids live. Yeah. So in friends and everything else. Like I want to know. At least what we're not to be monkeying around, for lack of a better term, especially after dark.
So have you done any other research on the area to see how many more sightings there are besides yours? Because here's what always and I always ask people this that are interested in the subject after they've had an experience. And some people aren't interested. They just are like, I've had this experience. I don't know what it is. I don't want to see it again. But I know you're very interested in seeking answers. And and I always ask, like, okay, have you looked at other reports? But the thing always is you didn't report yours to anybody, neither did the lady, neither did your uncle, neither did the lady, or her dad. So right there's like four reports that didn't get put on the record. That even if you did do some research, you'd never know when if somebody else was doing research, they wouldn't know about your story until they heard this show, and then they still don't know real particular points to it. So, but did you, with that being said, did you go and like see if you could find any more reports?
Oh man, I went down the rabbit hole head first, and that just recently came up for air. Um, I couldn't get enough. I had to find out more, and then the more I found out, the crazier it gets. There's a deer running through the yard now. The crazier it gets. But I know there's a county close to here, Warren County, over in the Linden area. It straddles Warren and Fauquier County, northern Fauquier County. They had a bunch of reports of Bigfoot, and there's a guy that I've seen that's commented on some of the shows and the threads about how he lived. It's an area called Apple Mountain and Blue Mountain, and has supposedly pictures, but everybody's afraid to talk to everybody. Um, I know that there's been reports over to Shenandoah County. I know a preacher that I spoke to, and his son, and his son's now ex-wife, that all saw. The preacher was on a ridge hunting. He heard. He said I couldn't. I couldn't tell if it was a howl or a scream or what. He said, but I'd never heard it before in my life, and it was down the ridge, across the road, and on this larger piece of property. He said you could hear it, and then it got closer. You could hear it again, and then something large came up the ridge, came up around behind him, stopped, was there for a little while. He said he was getting really, really nervous, and then it went over the ridge and went down through the woods behind him. He said, he called me by name. He was like, I don't know what that was. I don't, he said, but it was maybe whatever it was massive. Um, and I was talking to his son about it, and I was like, I said, you think he's pulling my leg? And he was like, no. He said, man, me and his ex-wife's name, we were coming home, and he said we came around the curve on such a road, and it's northern Fauquier County, and two large black figures, is how he described it, stepped into the cornfield, and he said you could see the corn moving like water, basically parting as they're going through it. And the corn at the time was like 8 feet tall, and he said you could kind of see the tops of their head up above it going out, but you could see them parting the corn like a deer going through a hay meadow, parting the grass. And I called his wife, a week or two later, and I was like, hey, is he really? And she was like, so she's called me by name. She was like, I swear to you. And she took her religion very seriously. She was like, I swear to you, I saw it. She said, if he was messing with you, I'd tell you. She said, but I saw it too. I don't know what that was. but it was off of one of these back roads. I think a lot of people see stuff and they just won't report it. There's one gentleman who is very high up, very well respected, very high up in a local agency, very, very well respected. And he told me point blank, he said, this was probably in the 80s. He said, I saw a lion. And I was like, huh? And he said, I saw a lion, and it was right at the foot of the Blue Ridge Mountains, in this jurisdiction. And he said, I saw a lion. And I was like, are you sure? Because by then I'd gone down the rabbit hole and I had read all the stories and the walking this and this kind of man. They supposedly have almost like a mane of fur around their neck and stuff. And I was like, you sure there's no way it was canine? And he was like, absolutely not. He said it looked like an African lion from the movies, from the MGM. He said, I was walking my little dog. He said, right at the edge of the light, had the dog. He said, the dog got the whimpering and shaking and was staring in the woods and was just peeing all over itself. And I was like, oh, and he said, I looked over and he said, you could see it. There was two eyes. You could see the mane, see the face, everything was sitting right there at the light. And he took the dog back in the house, backing up, and it kind of backed up into the light and the darkness was gone. During that time, there was a couple horses that were attacked in this area. Something came through an upper, like a hayloft kind of window into a barn and scratched a couple horses up real bad, cut them up. They said it had to be a bobcat. No one ever solved that one, so to speak. But I've never heard that before since. But he's got no reason to lie, and it would only hurt his reputation. And he told me alone in his office. He was, he told his wife. I knew his wife very well, and she was like, "Go talk to him, and have him tell you about that." And he did, and he was like, "No, absolutely not." He said it looked like a lion. When I asked him about that, because I talked to, his wife had brought it up because others of us were talking one day, which you and I talk. I work for the local government, and some of us were talking, and everybody from the top official in that office down, there's about 6 or 8 of us that have seen mountain lions here. Point blank, that's what it is. Some saw them run across the road. Some saw them in the field. I saw mine in like 89 or 90, maybe 700 yards behind the house, down through the mountainside there at a spring. Me and a buddy, we were in a tree fort, and we had like it was like a weird, now I realize it was a silence. At the time, we just had a weird feeling something wasn't quite right, like somebody's watching you. Now, as I'm older, I realize it was silence, and we just didn't pick up on it. We got up in the tree fort, and we're hanging out, and we're quiet. And this thing came out of one side of the property and walked over and stopped and looked right at us. It switched its tail. It didn't make a noise, but it kind of pulled its lips back a little bit. You could see its teeth. It stared at us. I'll never forget the eyes. It was the coolest thing and the most frightening thing because it never made a sound. And it was big. It was bigger than a Labrador. It was big, and the tail was as long as the body. I've never seen one since. Not in a hurry to see one, but I know it was there. And when you talked about doing research, I've bought books and gone back, looked through records, and there's sightings at least back into the late 1800s by doctors and lawyers and mail route carriers and UPS drivers that have seen mountain lions here. My ex saw one in northern Fauquier County, plain as day. She also saw a Fisher cat before they were officially declared to be in the state. She saw one and was like, I don't know what that thing was. So it does happen. And I've had other people see one and they're like, you're never going to guess what I saw. Because I'm always asking people nowadays, hey, have you ever seen anything crazy? And they're like, well, what do you mean by crazy? And you don't want to come off, you don't want to come off strong and be like, I saw a Bigfoot when I was 14. You're like, well, it's, whatever. You ever seen a ghost? You ever seen a spaceship? Because at the time, the government, wasn't saying they were real. Have you ever seen a Bigfoot? You ever seen anything spooky, anything weird, just anything crazy, anything you couldn't explain? And the one guy could call me. He was like, hey, I just saw a mountain lion. It came across such a road, northern Fauquier County. He said it like landed on the side, and he said I locked up the brakes on the truck. It looked right at me, and then it leaped twice and was gone across the other side of the road. Gone. He said it went almost all the way across the road in one bound and then went up the bank and it was out of sight. And he made a mistake of getting online on like a hunting forum and talking about it and was ridiculed. And I'll never forget one of the comments was, "Oh, if you saw a mountain lion, I bet you saw Bigfoot too." And I was thinking, hell, I saw both. But you can't tell people that they don't want to have that veil pulled back from their eyes. But that's something that I do now is I ask people when I get a chance, and it's kind of cool when we're off to the side. Hey, you ever seen anything crazy? And it just depends. I've had.
For the record, I do the same thing everywhere we go. My wife is totally gets mad. She knows when I'm gearing up to say, "Hey, is there any good ghost stories here?" or and she's just like, "Oh," okay. And she tells everybody, "Careful how you answer. You never know what you're getting into."
You learn what house not to spend the night in.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But if you don't ask, people aren't going to just. It's like you said. If you don't ask, people are just going to volunteer that information because if I don't know you, it's the same thing. You're going to think I'm crazy. But when you put it out, like, have you seen anything? Well, then they kind of get the feeling like, hey, I can maybe talk about this. This person's asking me,
because they want to talk about it. They just don't want to be ridiculed for it.
Yeah, that's
unity.
That's 100%. People do want to talk about this stuff. They don't want to be ridiculed. That is the bottom line for sure.
So, like I said, I've talked to a couple conservation officers who told me point blank. He called me by name and he said, "Yeah," he said, I got contacted by a landowner. I want to say Rockingham, Page County. It was over that way. He sent me a video of people are gonna think you're crazy, but of a large black cat eating on a deer carcass. His game camera picked it up. He said, "I went out to the property. From looking at the video, he was like, yeah, that's the rock, that's the tree, that's the log. He's like, this is the spot. And if that log or tree is that big, that means that deer was full size, which means that cat was massive." And he said he contacted Richmond, and Richmond said, "Don't talk about it, drop it, leave it alone." It never happened. And his buddy was standing there who works in a different county, and he said, he'd had the same experience. He said, but he because he turned to the first guy and he was like, he said, "Did you turn into Richmond?" And he was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "Nah, I didn't." He knew better. But yeah, and then I had two state officials, is the best way to put it. I don't want to put them in trouble. One was from northwestern part of the county, and one had or the county of the state, and one had family in the southwestern part of the state. And the one with the family in the southern part of the state said he knew for a fact there was at least two that had been killing livestock, and the locals had shot them and threw them over in, I want to say like New River Gorge, but some river gorge down there. And the guy from the western part said, yeah, he said, "I used to be a local official over towards Page County, way over that way, out to the western part." And he said, yeah, he said, "I had one come right down across the road one night when I was working." But there's 4 or 5 gentlemen and ladies that I work with that have seen them here. I have a very good friend that is attached to the Park Service after a fashion. And he was like, yeah, he said, "I had one sniffing my butt in my hammock tent." He said, "I woke up to this snuffling, and he said, I thought it was maybe a bear." He said, "I was getting ready to yell. And when he said, when I looked at the side of the hammock, he said, there's a mountain lion standing there sniffing at me." I said, "What did you do?" He said, "I held really still." I held really still.
Well, so, okay. So there's all these instances where government officials have seen things that are not supposed to be in the area, and then the higher ups don't want any of the officials to talk about it, and it's a matter of, do they think people are going to go crazy and lose their minds that, oh my God, there's mountain lions out there, or a lion for that matter of fact. Or, and they don't want, or do they, the national parks, do they not want people hiking because, well, we can't send people down the trail because they might get eaten by a mountain lion. But then you turn around and you have all these missing persons cases all over the country. And I mean, how many of those in places where they want to tell you there aren't these kind of animals may be attributed to you can't tell me that a hungry mountain lion or a hungry lion sees a 6-year-old kid walking down the trail and is going to say, I'm going to pass up on the kid and wait for this, 200-pound deer that I might not be able to chase down. No, they're going to go after the kid or the person, the elderly person, or somebody they think they could take down. And I mean, that's the part that gets me is they know this stuff is out there. And we're not even talking about Bigfoot. We're just talking about stuff that is real, known to exist 100%. No, why would anybody think you're crazy just because you say there's a mountain lion? Because they're going to come to places that you don't expect just because that's what animals do.
Like California, like if you remember back, was it the 90s, early 2000s? They were killing people. The mountain lions were
Yeah.
several people killed them.
They're dragging kids off.
Yeah, they will eat people. And if you think a mountain lion can't carry a 6-year-old child, the average one, not me being overgrown, but a normal 6-year-old child up a tree or through the brush, you're crazy. A leopard does it. Mountain lions will only catch it. But if you think it can't carry it off into the woods, you'd be foolish. But the government isn't. What gets me is the DNR or the fishing game, whatever it is, wherever anybody lives, will tell you, there's not mountain lions in Virginia. You're crazy. There's not black bears in Ohio. There's not black cats anywhere. But if you talk to the people that actually deal with it, and they don't think you're going to run around and dime them out, for lack of a better term, then they'll tell you, yes, it does. Absolutely, it does. We've all seen it. Your mail carriers, your UPS delivery guys see a bunch of crazy stuff. But
yes,
if they're lying,
yes, I do, but I'm not allowed to talk about it.
Yeah, see, but if they're lying to you about a mountain lion, which is a normal animal, what do you think that they're going to tell you the truth about anything else? There was a comedian one time that said, if you don't have any conspiracy theories, like, I don't know about that, because the government's in charge of millions of people. He was in charge of just his one son, and he lies to him all the time. You think they're not going to lie to us? Crazy.
Well, I'll give a shout out to Stacy Brown, my good friend Stacy Brown, who in his documentary, Beyond the Truth or whatever, he's going to kill me for not knowing the title. But they down in Florida, sent a FOIA request to the Fish and Wildlife in Florida, and I mean they made it impossible for them, and they knew that a couple of officers had actually reported skunk ape sightings, and they tried to tell them, no, we don't have any, and they're like, well, yeah, we know you do, so just give us these, give us any emails that say skunk ape, Bigfoot, whatever, and there came back like 70,000 of them, but they couldn't get them because they wanted to charge them like $13,000 for somebody to go through and redact all the information that they couldn't see. And
yeah, it's the same reason they don't keep track of how many people are turn up missing in the parks.
Yeah, because they don't want people to know. And you're exactly right. If they're going to lie to us about a mountain lion, they're certainly going to lie to us about something they don't even know what it is.
That same buddy, he told me, he said, man, if you go back and look at all the counties that surround Shenandoah National Park, look at how many missing kids and people are in those counties.
Wow. And I'm going to tell you, so I was just coming back from South Carolina a couple of weeks ago, and there was a big accident on 77. And so we got off and took the detour that our GPS told us, and it took us through like Fancy Gap, which I thought that was an odd name for the gap because it wasn't real fancy. But we went through this called Fancy Gap, and I mean, we're going down roads that are hairpin turns through I mean, you can't tell me that there's not mountain lions, bears, elephants, Bigfoot, whatever living in that area. Because then you get it close to the, I mean, it's crazy. It's some of the most remote stuff I've seen for having a 2-lane road that close to a freeway, you know?
Oh, everybody thinks there's not enough food or enough space or this, that, or the other. But if you look at it, especially I guess through a drone or an airplane, you have Shadow National Park, you have the Blue Ridge Parkway, you have all these back roads, all the conservation easements out this way, all the local parks, all the river systems, all the railroad tracks, all the cornfields, all the orchards. There's a massive amount of cover and places for anything with any sense, from a house cat to a Bigfoot to whatever. And the deer population is well over 1 million animals. And again, cornfields, orchards, soybean fields. There is a massive amount of food and cover and water, not so much right now, but water everywhere, everywhere. There's no reason to not think that some predator of some type isn't going to take advantage of all those resources.
Yeah, and if you don't get
Coyotes,
off, if you don't get
you
off,
know,
if you don't get off the main highway, you don't really understand that. You know, you just drive through all these places and you think, oh, there's a lot of trees. But until you get down in there on the back roads, you just don't understand how remote and desolate some of those places are. And
oh
I
yeah,
was really shocked. I have driven in the back roads of Virginia before, but never on those roads. And I was like, wow, this is some wild territory for sure.
oh yeah, and once you get out past the actual, Richmond, Hampton, the whole Northern Virginia area, but even down there, there's still little pockets of Western Loudoun County. Even there's still pockets of area where, as long as it's got any kind of sense, because just like this, like the mountain lion, I know it's here. I've seen it. I've had numerous officials tell me off the record, yeah, I saw it. I saw it this year or this time or this whatever. If it can be here and it can survive and it can eat and it's clearly breeding, unless more are pouring in, and from where, I don't know, because they're not supposed to exist in the East. They're coming from somewhere. It's sustaining itself and living here. So, and the one gentleman, the one state official, it was a mother with a an older cub. It it's they're here, and if it can sustain them, do you really think it can't sustain a Bigfoot or whatever? There's in my area, there's apples everywhere. There's corn everywhere,
Mm.
field corn, just miles of it. And if you move at dusk, nighttime, you'd never know. And if they're not taking chickens, you never know. It's only
So, so now you told me a couple stories of strange, for lack of a better term, excuse me, big animals that you yourself have seen.
oh yeah. The I used to be able to do damage control, which is a fancy way of saying that I got to hunt coyotes on a large piece of property in in north central Virginia. Not far from here, but I don't want to narrow it down. But it was a nice, very large piece of property, and there's several here in this area. There's 2,000, 4,000 acre properties, and they had a lot of trouble with coyotes killing calves. They've since resolved it. They've used more natural means. But at the time, that's what I was doing on days off. And I'm over there, checking through the field, looking at the cows and everything. It's a very, very, very pretty place, very picturesque. And I see what looks like a deer. And it's down in this little bowl area that was referred to as the shooting range. They used to have targets built up because it was bowl shaped. It was a natural berm. And I was like, man, that deer is really red. Like that's because you see some here at least that they look gray, some look red. You listen to the rumors and stories. Oh well, some were brought in from Canada and some are native, and I have no idea. As far as I know, they're just deer. But this thing was really red, and it was like, the hell is that? And when I got in binoculars, it wasn't a deer. It was a canine. And I say dog. I don't know what it was, but it was so tall. it was the size of like a full-grown doe. I've never seen another red dog that big, that tall. It wasn't super blocky and thick. I have, my ex raised these dogs that were half Mastiff and half Great Dane. They could be, the females like 150, 170 pounds. Big dog.
Jeez.
Males are up around 200. Big dogs. This thing wasn't as stocky as the male, but it was taller than the female. It was tall. And I ended up taking a shot at it, and it just I've gone super fast. Never saw it again. Never saw any more of it. But like I was telling you, maybe 2-3 weeks later, I'm listening to the radio, and I had a friend that lived up in Hagerstown, Maryland, and then the radio announcer was talking about the news, and he mentioned Hagerstown. I was like, oh, what is that about? And it was reports of large red dogs going into people's backyards, breaking into chicken coops and rabbit hutches and killing their rabbits and chickens. And I was like, man, I wonder, is that somehow connected? I don't know that it is, but I've never seen that thing again. I don't know what it was, where it went. Nobody else has reported it. While working in the county at night, I spent a lot of years on nights. But I've got pictures tucked away somewhere. There was a red canine. It looked more like a Malamute looking thing, but it was on the side of the road eating a deer carcass. Me and another gentleman that was, riding with me, but the spotlight on it, and we're looking at it, and like it would duck its head. It didn't act like a dog, or at least not a pet. It would duck its head down, try to hide behind the deer, and it would stare at us. And we just sat there. And he was like, "Why don't you get out and see what it does?" I was like, "I don't think I'm going to be doing that." And it did not act aggressive. It acted more aloof. And I did put some feelers out about that thing, and a couple of people responded, and they were like, "Yeah, it came through my yard and it smelled god awful. It smelled rancid." And somebody else was like, "Yeah, they tagged a different person. They were like, is this that thing you were talking about that was hanging around your backyard?" Never saw it again. Never heard any more reports of it. Could have been a feral dog, but it was an 80, 90 pound feral dog. It was a deep, like a dried blood red color. And according to some people, it smelled horrible. But the wildest one was me and another gentleman that worked for the same agency went to, which clearly, but by this point, everybody knows that I do law enforcement. We went to a burglar alarm on a house that was unoccupied, vacant. It was down in the southern part of our county, and we go down to the bottom. It takes a while to get around, and we go up, and it's dusk. It's not dark, but it's going to be dark in about half an hour, 45 minutes, if that. And we're going down this dirt road. At the time, there was only maybe 2 houses back there. There was one to the right, and you get further down, there was this one. I come around a curve in this dirt road, and there's this meadow. It's maybe 5 acres. It's a little, at least what I can see of it is about 5 acres. And there's hay in it. It looks like it's ready to cut. And so it's probably 3 foot tall, somewhere around there, maybe a little taller. It's kind of bending over. It's hay. It's ready to be cut, overdue to be cut. There are 5, I want to say dogs, but I don't know what they were, canine, that were, they kind of came out of one side of the meadow as I turned the curve, and I locked it up and stopped, and they're going, they're not running, they're not loping, they're just kind of a slow trot across that meadow. There's 3 little ones with them that look like they're probably the size of a border collie, and they're doing what puppies do. They're nipping at the mouth, they're licking at the face, and they're kind of frolicking and playing. The 5 big ones never turned and looked at me. You could see a couple of them like kind of roll that eye back and look, but they never stopped. But the backs of these things, like the top of the shoulders, was up at the top of the grass or taller. I've never seen an animal that I saw one wolf hybrid that his name was Paul's. He had feet as big as like a pie plate. He was really, really tall, and he might have came up there close to it, but I've never seen, these things were up above that grass. If they were massive, and there was 5 of them, and it's like a dirty white eggshell kind of color. It wasn't like bright white. It wasn't paper white by any means. It was like a dirt white. There was some other like, silver, gray or something mixed into it. And they just trod across that field. And when they hit the other side, they they got into the shadows in the trees. And like I said, it was dusk and they were just gone. And when they were gone was when I finally got the nerve to get out of the car. And I'm standing up and looking, like trying to see what that was. And then suddenly the guy that was following me to go to this call was like, "Hey, the hell was that?" And it like scared me to death. I forgot he was there. I forgot anything else was going on. I was focused on those things. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know what the hell that was. I have no idea. He's like, "Well, what do you want to do?" I was like, "We got to go check this house." Like I'm not going in those trees like that. Like I'm not going to go look for him. So we go down to the house. And he was like, "Well, what do you want to do?" I said, "Well, I'm going to the front door with that porch lights on, and you're going to go around back and check the back door." And he was like, "You just want me to get eat?" And I was like, "You run faster than I do. You're going around back. If it happens, you holler. I'll come running." And nothing was there. The house was fine. Like we don't know what triggered that alarm. But it was enough of something with the windows or the doors or whatever to cause the alarm to go off and the company to be notified and then to call us. Never saw those things since. I've got friends that live down that way. I've talked to them. The one family, the mother is very religious. She will not lie, not even to save her, shouldn't say save, but not even to like cover for her kid. And she called me by name and she was like, "Yeah, we had something in the woods." She said, "Such and such, my daughter recorded it. We never saw it, but it was like growling and snarling and you could hear it." She said it sounded like it was walking on branches back and forth behind the house in the wood line one night. And they were on the porch looking and talking. And she said it acted very angry, as was her words, whatever it was, but it never came out. They also had tracks. She sent it. I don't know where they are. She sent it to me. And they had like a set of tracks, but it was tracks like you or I would leave. It wasn't 4 prints. It was 2. It started 10 or 12 feet out from the wood line when it went across their yard. And then about 15 feet from the other wood line, they disappeared. It was just a single. She couldn't figure out why they were there. And she was like, "What is?" Like she wanted answers, and I was like, "I don't have one. I have no idea what did that." Going down the rabbit hole years later, maybe it jumped. I don't know. It wasn't human footprints. It was some kind of a paw. But I don't know. I couldn't give it to her. But yeah, it's been weird stuff like that I've gone to over the years. There was an elderly couple up on top of a mountain, and after I passed every other house, I drove every bit of a mile back and forth up that mountainside to get to their house. And they told me they believed that kids down the mountain were coming up late at night and tapping on their windows and scratching on the house and stuff and on their screen. And I had to go out and walk around this house at 9:30 at night, 10 o'clock. And by that point, I'd had another experience, so I knew I was real leery. And you get out back and it's just silence, just dead silence. Never saw anything, thank goodness. Didn't hear anything, thank goodness. Made my loop, couldn't see any. I couldn't see. Of course, I'm looking for tracks. I'm looking for any kind of smudge prints, fingerprints. I can't see anything. And get back around and talk to them. It's an older couple, and she's very upset about it. But man, I can't find anything. And she was like, "Well, something took her screen out one night." We were like, "Oh, where's that?" "Oh, we put it back." And it was like, these screens are 5-6 foot off the ground. I'm able to look straight into the window, and there's nothing but mountain laurel and brush and Virginia creeper, and it's steep. I was in a car, and if I'd have stopped, I'd have had to back up and get a start to get going again. Steep. And I was like, there's no, I mean, it's possible, but there's no kids coming up through here in the middle of the night through the woods, because they have sensors on the driveway, through the woods to come scratch on your windows and tap on it. You'd have to have a mortal enemy to go through the cedars and the snakes at 10 o'clock at night to come just tap on your window and scratch it. And
Yeah,
the answer, I'm like, "Ma'am, I'm sorry. Like I'll come up and drive, shine the spotlight around for the next 7 days or so, but I have no idea what's doing that, and you can't answer them. But we get stuff like that every so often, and you're just like how do you answer that?
Well, so before because we're almost running out of time, but there was that one story I asked you if you could tell, because I think it's one of the best. I don't even know how to label it, but I think it's one of the best firsthand paranormal whatever stories I've heard in a long time. Can you share that with the audience?
Sure. So, like I said, I work for a local agency. I've been there altogether over 18 years. I had a small break, came back, but I've been there a long time, and not prone to rash behavior. It takes a lot to shake me. I've gone into houses after people with guns. I've gone into the woods after a bear that's been hit by a car because you don't leave it there suffering, kind of thing. But I got a call one night for a life alert, which if you remember the TV commercials, help, I've fallen and I can't get up, and they push that button and help would show up at their door. It's one of those things. So we get dispatched out, life alert button. They send us, and they have fire and rescue staged somewhere close by in case it's a real emergency, but you never know. People will push them for domestics or whatever. I get up the long driveway. It's up in a hollow in the mountainside. The top of the hollow goes into national park. I go up, I get up to the top of the driveway, and the driveway stops, and there's a sidewalk that goes up along the wood line next to this mountain laurel, like a wall of it, and then it goes down to the house. And there's a car, at least one car sitting there, and I can see the house, and the storm door, if you know it, it's not a screen door, but it's a glass and metal door, like a screen door, closed, and the inside house door is open, and there's a light on. My number, dispatch on scene, door is open, out checking. And I had felt it coming up the driveway. As I got up in the driveway, I could feel it, and I got to that parking place, I could feel it. And normally I would get out and go about my business. But I had such a feeling that just got more and more intense that if I go down to that house, I was going to die. I don't know how to describe it. I never had that feeling before. I haven't had it since. Nothing to that level. I knew whatever if I got out of that car and went to that house, I was going to die. And I had to sit there and argue with myself, and because I wanted to leave. I've never shirked a duty, and I've never left. I've never halfway done a call. If I tell you I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna figure it out. I'm gonna help you somehow, or tell you I can't, and explain. Somebody, I'm coming. But I wanted to leave. I wanted bad, and I was trying to find a reason to justify it in my mind of why I didn't need to go to that house. I've never done that. I've never done it since. I didn't do it then. But it was, I had to fight myself to get out of that car because, like I said, I knew, like I knew in my bones that if I went to that house, I was going to die. So I get myself, like you gotta back up. You got a gun, man. Come on, you get your act together. Get out of the car, looking around, breathing. Just like what is going on with me? I'm kind of, am I having an anxiety attack? Is this what that feels like? Like, what is going on? I don't have any new medication. Like, what is happening to me? But I know I'm going to die if I go to this house. I get about halfway or so, third of the way down this sidewalk, and it dawns on me that it is dead quiet. And it's like August. It's, cicadas and crickets and grasshoppers and bugs and birds and mosquitoes, everything else. And it is dead silent. It is dead. Like it's not a vacuum, but it's pretty close. Like there's nothing. I could hear the firemen way on down the hill, coming up and parking or whatever. Of course, my radio is on, but it's nothing. There's no night birds, nothing. And I've got my flashlight out in my one hand, and my gun's got a light, and I've got both of them going. And I'm shining left, shining right, and I'm shining behind me. I'm looking up, I'm looking in the trees, on the roof, and everything. Like, because something's here for me. That's how it feels. Like something's waiting on me, and if I go over there, it's going to kill me. That's what it feels like. And when the silence registers, it's like something's up. Something's up. Somebody's here. Like, gut instinct. I don't know what. Something's telling me, this is it. And I get down to the house, and I don't die, and it's a little bit of sigh of relief. But now I got to go in this place. So I beat on the door. I kind of look first. I don't see anything. I don't hear anything. I beat on the door. I go inside. Announce myself, and no response. Nothing. And there's plates on the table with crumbs and stuff. It's like somebody was eating and just walked away from it. So I searched the house, still hollering out. Never see anybody. Never hear anything. Nothing. I come back out. I let dispatch know what's going on, and I'm getting ready to go out the door. And I look over, and it catches my eye. It was like a string hanging off the side of the top of the refrigerator. And I look at that, and I'm like, the hell is that? And it's a life alert button on top of the fridge. And it's a little rectangle, looks like a doorbell with a little button in the middle. And you push that button, that's what calls it. And I read, hey, be advised, I've got it here. There's nobody present. Going to be continue to check the house. And I put it back on top of the refrigerator. What the hell? Go out the door, look around the front, look to the, if I'm facing the house, it would be the left. Look to the left, don't see anything. There's nothing, there's no doors. To the right, unfortunately, is a set of steps. At the very bottom is one light. There's a door down there, and it's like, sweet, goodness. Why? Because the feeling's never left, and now it's really ramping up. And again, I'm standing there for I don't know how many minutes, arguing with myself. You got to go check. What if they've it's a couple and they've each got a button, and he fell down the steps trying to help her, and they're both laying down. Whatever. They had a heart attack down. Whatever. That's his button, and he's gone, and she's down there doing laundry or something. And you've got to go. But if I go, I'm going to die. If I go, I'm going to die. If I go down these steps, I'm going to die. I'm not coming back. I'm going to die. In my mind, death was waiting. Not a person, not an animal, not a thing. Death. Death was waiting on me down there. Death itself was waiting on me on them steps. That's how it felt. Sweat's pouring out of me. It's got me rattled. But I can't walk away from it. Again, you sack up, you go down the steps, get down. I am looking everywhere. It had, if you couldn't see me, it must have been like a strobe light, because I'm everywhere. I'm looking and looking and looking. And you get down there, and it's a laundry room is what it turned out to be. A bit of a basement, and you look around, nobody's there. Come back out. When I come back out, I look left, I look right, I peek around the back of the house. I did not want to peek behind that house, because I hadn't seen it yet, and I knew it was going to be there. Whatever it was going to be there, but it wasn't. And I backed up the steps, like one leg up, one leg back, and I'm looking. It was something was coming to get me. I get back upstairs. Dispatch be advised, no one's at the property. I don't know how long that took from the time I got there to that point. I don't know. I go back up the sidewalk, and as I'm getting up to the sidewalk where it meets the mountain laurel, I hear something on the other side of the mountain laurel in the brush, and I'm like, "How is that?" And then I take a couple steps, and it's kind of keeping pace with me behind the mountain laurel, and I stop, and it stops. And I kind of backed up, and it backed up. And I took a couple more steps forward, and it took a couple more steps forward, and it registers with me that it's not. If you've heard of deer in the leaves, it's not like the two steps. It's walking the way I walk, whatever it is. And I walk closer to my car because I don't run fast, and I want every advantage I can get. But I walk closer towards my car. It walks. I'm like, sheriff's office, show yourself. Thinking that if I challenge it, if it's an animal, it's going to run away, or it's going to huff if it's a bear or whatever. If it's a person, hey, the jig is up. Like what's happening here, and be advised, if you come out of there with a weapon or whatever, like this isn't going to be a fun time for either of us. Nothing, no response, no nothing. I challenge it again, no response, nothing. Flashlights out, gun lights out. I get down almost down on one knee, and I'm looking up underneath the mountain laurel because you can't see through the stuff. It's so, if you've ever dealt with it, it's like a rhododendron bush, or maybe it is, but it's so interwoven. It's like a wall. But down at the base, there's a lot of places where deer and small animals will try to find a hole to get through. So I'm trying to look, see if I can see feet, boots, paws, whatever. I can't see anything. I'm trying to look through holes in the brush. The flashlight, is a stream light. I'm trying to see. It's pretty good light. I can't see a thing. And I get right up close to the mountain laurel. And like I said, I'm 6'2". I'm wrapping the mountain laurel. I'm trying to look through it. And I'm like, what the hell is that? And about that time, there was this deep, rumbling, guttural growl 6 or 8 inches above my head. It was up above the top of my head. I leap back as best I can. I'm not, acrobatic by any means, but I jump back, and that gun is trained on where that sound came from. And I say a few choice words, and I'm looking at that wall. And it was at that point that the local volunteer fireman, who has since passed away, that lived 2 houses down, walked up the driveway and calls me by name. And I almost shot this man when I spun around, because he was like, "Hey, such and such." And I spun around, and he throws his hands up, and I was like, "Holy, what are you doing? What are you doing? What's going on?" There's a bear in the woods, because I don't want to tell him I think there's a damn monster over here trying to get me. There's a bear in the woods. Be careful. He was like, "Oh, well, we're staging. Are you good?" And I was like, "Oh my God, I never released you." So I was like, "No, there's nobody here. There's nobody here. You guys are good. You guys are good." And he was like, "You okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, there's a bear in the woods. There's a bear in the woods. Just be careful." Later on, the people that live there come home, and they see that our dispatch has called them 2 or 3 times. So they call back and they're like, "Hey, what's going on? Like what happened at our house? What do you want?" And dispatch is like, "Well, we had a life alert, blah, 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 blah." And they're like, "No, like we left the button here and went to Charlestown to go gamble." And they were like, why did your officer leave our door open?" And they were like, "That's how he found it." And I did. I forgot to close the door. I wanted gone from that place. And they were like, "No, like we weren't even in the state, and that door was closed when we left. And the life alert was on the table. The life alert was on the table. They ate dinner. They were talking. "Hey, you want to go?" "Yeah, let's go." The wife took it off, put it on the table, and they went to Charlestown. When I got there, it was on top of the fridge, and the door was sitting open, and something at least 7 foot tall, because it was above my head. I'm 6'2", 6'3", growled at me from the other side of the mountain laurel, and I never saw it. And I couldn't tell you what it was, but to this day, when I go up in that hollow, I do not monkey around after dark. I don't get out and do foolish stuff. I got permission to hunt farther up that hollow from a gentleman, and I was like, "Thank you so much," but I never went up there. Never. I don't know what it was, but it took the fire out of me.
So the question is, did the thing that growl at you push the life alert button?
Something or somebody opened the front door of that house, took it off the table, and put it on top of that refrigerator. I passed no cars. Now, could they? It's a horseshoe hollow. It goes in one side and comes out the other. That's the only entrance in. There's roads off of that road. That's the only way in and out is either, because it goes up this ridge and it meets, the 2 roads meet. So you can go left or right, so to speak. You know what I mean? But it's a horseshoe. Mm-hmm. So they could have gone the other way if it was a person. Nothing was stolen. Nothing was missing. Nothing was torn up. The door was open. The life alert was moved, and the button was pushed.
So
I don't even Scooby-Doo would have a hard time solving that one.
Well, here's the thing: if you're going to do that, then you're going to hang around and watch to make fun of or get a laugh at whoever shows up. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Because
you get some satisfaction out of it.
Yeah. Why announce to anybody that you broke into somebody's house?
Yeah, and they had plenty of time. I mean, we'd have never known if they had to push that button. We were only there because that life alert button got pushed. And if you're just going to push it to call us, why? If you're not going to enjoy the satisfaction of it, and it didn't happen again or anywhere else, But why pick it up and put it on top of the refrigerator? Why move it?
I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, dude, it was crazy. Whenever whatever that was growled at me, oh man, you'd have bought me for a nickel. It was. If something would have came out of that brush, I'd have emptied that gun. It was, I don't know what it was, but at least in my mind, that was where, that was, after all the dread I'd felt, that was it. I don't know what it was, but that was it. But it took the starch out of me quick.
Well, John, I don't know what's going on in Virginia, in your neck of the woods, but I mean, you're way more of a man than I am, that you're still going out there serving your community and not knowing what you're getting into. I mean, my hat's off to you.
Much more cautious these days. much more cautious. Carry several flashlights. Make sure they all work, and definitely checking the roof and the trees and everything else. It's not just people I'm looking for. Just to be careful. I don't know how that situation's going to end, but we're going to give it a shot and see what happens.
Well, I don't blame you for being more cautious, but I do appreciate, you coming on and sharing these stories. And I hope that somebody from that area is listening and maybe has some insight on some of those animals that you and some other people have seen. And I'd certainly like to know more about why they're covering that up. And it just seems silly to me. So, and dangerous at the same time.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So,
definitely.
Well, thank you again. And, we'll stay in touch. And, I have a feeling that you're going to luckily or unluckily stumble onto something else here, and pretty soon.
There's a few more stories in the bank, but yeah, there's been some other odd things. It's like I said, it's nothing major, but it's been more than a few. And like I said, when I thought about it, it was like, man, that's really weird. And when I wrote them all down, it was like, that's really, really weird. Just the chain of events.
Well, hey, we'll have to set it up, and if you have a couple more, then maybe we got episode 2. So,
let me know.
I will. So thanks again, and be careful. Be extra careful out there.
Yes, sir. You too.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the From the Shadows podcast. Until next time, never shy away from the darkness or what may be lurking in the shadows. We are out.
God only knows what's hiding